in lead, which is really led to the downfall as to why it was so combustible, unfortunately.
And so the carpentry of the ceiling seems to be the most significantly architectural feature lost, because we've seen a report from one authority saying that the structure of the building seems intact, the main structure. Talk us through what would have happened. Well, first of all, the significance of that carpentry in the ceiling that's been lost.
So you're right. I think it's a great effort by firefighters that it looks like at the moment that they've been able to preserve the front two towers. The ceiling itself, when you look at it from underneath, before the fire, actually was lined in masonry, so probably small tiles or little brick structures. So the timber actually wasn't visible from inside all parts of the ceiling. But actually there's some very interesting photographs actually on the website.
We're just having a look at them now.
So you can actually see there's some internal roof photographs that show the very large timber members that formed the structure, and then you can see the top side of the vaulted ceiling.
And so how long has that timber structure been intact, do you know?
Well, the building was certainly built over various centuries, and different wings were built at different times. So it's hard to say, but I think the Notre Dame was sort of finished in the mid-1300s. So it's certainly been there for hundreds and hundreds of years and withstood, many wars and different pressures, I suppose. The sad thing is, unfortunately, if fire, as we all know, timber's combustible, and if fire takes hold, it's been able to take hold of the structure very quickly.
Yeah, and so is it conceivable that some of that timber work in the ceiling would have been there for several hundred years from the very beginning, or is it likely that would have been replaced several times over that period?
Oh, look, it's it's very well protected, I suppose, from the elements, which does allow timber to, be preserved and kept over a very long period of time. I'm sure, given the historic or the cultural importance of the building, that it's been restored and over the years. But certainly, it looks like that many of the parts would be original.
Yeah. And so how difficult will it be, first of all, to replace that timber work, that timber work in the ceiling?
Look, I think everything is, it is replaceable. I think sometimes people feel like when you're rebuilding significant structures that it might lose that sense of authenticity. But I think the Europeans and the French are renowned for their, I suppose, sensitivity to cultural restoration, and I have no doubt that they will be able to restore it appropriately for the significance of the building.
Now, as we mentioned, and we're just seeing the spire falling there in the fire from this morning, and that's been only a relatively recent addition. When you were talking about the Notre Dame, we've obviously several hundred years recent is still a fair way back. Yeah. But the spire should be replaced in a similar fashion, as you say, with the expertise of the Europeans in that work. But I'd like to get onto the stone. What they say, the stone structure seems to be intact, but what would the impact of this such an intense and massive fire been on the solid stone structure of Notre Dame?
I mean, stone is a very durable material. The walls of the building were built incredibly thick, they're very thick walls, which gives them a lot of structural integrity on their own. Obviously, a roof has a purpose of holding a building together and bracing the structure. I think it sounds from reports that the firefighters have been very strategic in how they've gone to battle, how they've approached battling the blaze in order to preserve as much of the structure as possible. I think now it's obviously also looking at how they can go about clearing the debris very carefully. It's very different to something like an earthquake where the foundations have been substantially affected. This has really obviously been happening from damage from above. So. From all reports, it's very early days, but to see that, I imagine that the foundation or the the stone structure should be, able to be preserved.
Yeah, and so, but what would the impact of fire been on the? Because it seems that the ceiling has fallen in on the floor, and so there would have been intense fire inside the cathedral. What impact would the flames have had on the stones and the extent of work that would need to be done, even if those stone walls are intact, to get those stone walls back to a condition which they are reasonably close to what they once were?
Yeah, look, I think I'm not an expert in heritage restoration, but I certainly feel that I would imagine that the stone, being that it's a solid material, it's not a delicate material, even if there's substantial smoke or flame damage to the stone, that would able to be treated in an appropriate way to get the stone back, and much like the restoration work that's been happening recently in removing hundreds of years of smog.
Well, at least that's one heartening factor.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the most famous features, or three of the most famous features of the cathedral, are the rose windows. I'd just like to get you to talk about, are they a significant Gothic feature, or just significant?
Fire that they're having at the Notre Dame Cathedral is something like few people have witnessed. Bye.